Now, moving on to the next session, it's on the topic Scaling Learning Effectiveness in the Age of AI with Conversational Roleplays. For this, I would like to invite Mr. Rohan Sabnis, VP Sales, Growiz.ai. Mr. Rohan is the VP Sales at Sharpcell, leading three critical functions that drive revenue, sales, demand gen, and key account management. Part of the founding team at Sharpcell and drove the revenue to 5 times in the last 4 years, taking care of hiring, setting up all the revenue functions, and drive growth in the new industries, closing deals with a high premium over the competition. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome Mr. Rohan with a big round of applause?
Hello, hi everyone. Welcome, all fellow HR leaders. The topic I'm going to talk about today is about conversational learning and conversational context. I just wanted to spend 2 minutes. I think the introduction that was given about me was from my LinkedIn. So I'll just quickly introduce what am I doing here and why am I talking about this topic. So I'm a chartered accountant. I did my internship, my 3-year internship in Deloitte. And one thing I observed during this entire journey is I learned a lot, a lot of technical skills. I learned a lot of, understanding financial statements, going into the details and so on. But a lot of what my peers were learning in, let's say, a parallel MBA course was a lot of conversational skills. And these didn't happen by someone teaching them. A lot of them happened, one, by, the peers that they were interacting with, and second, by a lot of practice, right? So, we all know that most MBA courses, they don't teach much directly, but there's a lot of practice put into place where you're constantly presenting, you're constantly put on the spot where you have to create things on, create things, add your own layer of thinking, and then come up with a solution, come up with an idea and communicate it effectively. So these were a few things that I realized were missing. And I was one of the few ones who was actually interested in going down that path. And so I obviously interacted a lot with my peers and ensured that I was up to speed on some of these things. I was very clear that this is something that a lot of people don't get enough. And I was very passionate about solving this. So right after my CA, I never really worked as an accountant. I kind of went down the learning and development route. I had my own startup in peer-to-peer learning. And simulation-based learning, where actually you're put into situations, you take certain decisions, and you see them play out. And today we are in the conversational learning space for Sharpcell, where Growiz is specifically a product that we have built to solve this gap. So why conversational learning? If we look broadly in today's learning space in most organizations, conversational skills are something that are usually focused on much more for our front-facing employees, the employees which actually face the customers. For a lot of internal-facing employees, they still might be as critical. Taking an example of an IT service companies, delivery leaders still have to talk to the client. It may not be their day job, but ultimately the delivery leader is also put in front of the client. So there's a lot of focus that conversational skills don't get for non-frontline or non-customer-facing employees. The second part is we also realize that while learning management systems are solving a large part of our what we want to drive in learning, right? Post our programs, the hard skills are being driven well because you can communicate them effectively and understanding concepts from consumption, you're able to put them into practice with examples and so on. But unfortunately, conversational skills are still not scalable. They still happen in our physical, classroom workshops where we actually put people into scenarios, we put people into role plays, we give them role plays, we have someone giving them feedback on the ground. Unfortunately, that's not something that's translated as much, for us to make it scalable. Where without calling people into a classroom, I can help people practice, build confidence, and also give them feedback. So that was essentially the gap that we realized, and we did a very large field survey to understand, if we were to look at the problem of conversational, learning, what is it that we should kind of really solve for? So I just wanted to share you some insights that came from this. We spoke to several HR leaders, L&D leaders, and also business leaders, because ultimately whatever we are trying to improve in terms of capability development has to transfer to business. So the first thing that we learned, again, very self-explanatory, and we already know this, but conversational skills are only learned by practice. Things like conflict resolution, I'm having an appraisal discussion, I'm having a managerial discussion where I have to manage someone. These are not things that I can teach for. Though you can teach for different scenarios that play out, unless the person actually tries it out, it will not build that confidence in them that I can take care of situations as they come along. The second is, we can practice a lot in front of the mirror, right? We can play out different scenarios, but when we are doing it completely on our own, without any feedback, how do we really improve? How do we know? How do we calibrate against what is good, what is bad, am I improving or not? So you need some kind of feedback when you're trying this out, when you're practicing. So some constant feedback is kind of very important. The third is when we are creating these scenarios, they have to be very specific to the context of our organizations and what the learner is going through in his day-to-day life. If it's not real for them and it feels very simulated, artificial, not for my industry, not for my job, then they are not going to be interested and it's not going to help them in their day job. So it has to be extremely contextual to their industry and their day job. So if we were to kind of stitch this all together and still use technology, because at the end of the day we want to make it scalable, we will obviously not be able to replace what happens in a physical classroom, but can we aid that by by doing some of these things in terms of practice, pre-training, post-training, and for other different use cases like hiring, creating assessment centers and so on. So that was the vision when we created what we today call as Growiz. So what does Growiz really do? Growiz is a conversational AI role play tool which can help a learner simulate any kind of conversation. It could be a customer-facing conversation where I want a salesperson to practice how it's like to deal with a difficult customer. It could be a first-time manager. I want to simulate how his first review with his subordinate is. So I can simulate that conversation, I can simulate a customer service conversation, and so on. So these are just a few examples. And the AI will basically play the other person, and we can give that other person instructions as to how the role play will play out. We don't give it a script, we give it some prompts. And how the prompts are given, I'll kind of come to that. But essentially, you have another person playing out these scenarios, and the role play AI might not react the same to every learner. It can be quite dynamic, and that's obviously the power of Gen AI. The second is it's very important to get the learner and the organization context built, baked into the role plays that we are creating. So if I'm talking about, let's say, a frontline facing delivery executive, the role play that I want to create is going to be very different where, when I'm talking about an IT service company salesperson talking to a large company's executive. So we can build out these different contexts. We can also build out different moods of the customer, how easy that customer or that person is going to be to open up. Is he going to talk rudely? Is he going to talk warmly, and so on? There can be a lot of these kind of things set up. Finally, coming to something like competencies, right? Each organization obviously has their own competency matrix, and not just the competencies, but how one organization defines it might be drastically different from the other. So let's say a TCS, the way they define empathy might be drastically different from, let's say, how a Cognizant would do it. So we can actually calibrate what a 5 rating should be. What kind of behaviors have to be demonstrated for a 5 rating in your company versus what the person's actually executing. So all of this calibration can be done specific to these role plays, and we can also get insights at what happens on the moment of truth. So while the learner can get analytics in terms of feedback, what did I do well, what did I struggle with, and in the future what can I do better. As someone who is managing the organization's capability, we can get a lot of insights. We can understand, what are the skills that my people are lacking in when it comes to conversations. What are they not able to do as effectively? Where are they struggling with? When it comes to introducing my company, what is not being mentioned? It can go as granular as we want. So when we built something like this as a scalable tool, there is obviously a lot of trade-offs and thoughts that came into, into the question. So I just wanted to maybe share some of them. And what are some of the decisions that we took. So one is infra and security. So obviously to simulate this conversation, we use a lot of Gen AI. And when you use Gen AI and any models in Gen AI, there's some data that you are sharing, which may be confidential, which may be specific to the organization. And though we heard today like 95% of the information is something that we could share within the organization, that we don't want that going outside the organization. So the same thing, to give that confidence, it can be hosted securely within the organization, and these prompts, we can kind of mask the sensitive data where client names are mentioned or people's names are mentioned. All of that can be masked when it goes to the AI, and even the response that comes out of it. So there's a lot of things that we can do on that. Second is audio versus video. When you're having this conversation, obviously the speed of the response is much faster when we only do audio. Whereas, in terms of the realness of the conversation, video is much better. So that's a trade-off that we started with, that, we'll do audio first, let people get used to the speed. And for video, we'll do more of one-time responses where, someone can talk and after some time he gets a, response. So these were some of the inputs that we took. In a country like India, where we have multiple dialects, so I'm not just talking about different languages, but multiple dialects, right? So for English itself, you have at least 4 to 5 different dialects of people within India. So how do we build in these kind of things? One, from an understanding perspective, where the AI is able to understand what the guy is actually talking. Second, actually when we are creating a person in front of, an AI character which actually plays out a certain role, can we have those accents coming into that AI character? So these are some things that we solved, and I'm going to show you an example of how we have solved that. How long should each conversation be? These are some of the smaller challenges. How do we make this contextual? So I think we already spent some time on this. We can define the AI persona. Who is the, is it a, what gender does he belong to out of the several genders? What is the persona's mood? Is it going to be something which is very easily going to open up and so on? And what does the AI already know about this context before starting it? So all of this can be defined. And I'm going to quickly show you how the scenario actually plays out. So this is an example that's given to the learner where, he's given a situation where, you are in an IT company and this is the first time that you're going to take a review of someone who's worked in the organization for a long time. His name is Vikram. Your primary aim is to tackle Vikram's recent performance issues and at the same time to make him comfortable and stay within the organization. And what are some of the recent issues with Vikram? There are some project deadlines that are missed and so on. So all of that information is given. There are some points to be covered that we want to kind of add as guardrails to this conversation, that don't have too open-ended a conversation, but broadly make sure that all of this is covered. And finally, what are the skills that are already mapped to this? So empathy, communication skill, and listening is mapped. And for empathy, we can also give examples of what 1 is, what 3 is, and what 5 is, and so on. I'm going to actually play out a quick video, which where we have recorded this situation. So where I click on start conversation and I actually record my own response. So as a learner, I actually start recording. Do you enable voice? I'm just going to play it again. Okay, there seems to be some issue with the voice, but I'll quickly take you through what's happening here. I'm actually recording my response of how I'm starting with this conversation. So I'm setting up the context. I'm saying that, hi Vikram, I'm here to meet, we are here to discuss your first review. And, I also introduced that there have been some conflicts and issues that have come into the picture. So I wanted to hear your point of view before we go into that. So, how do you set up the context in a way that Vikram is comfortable really talking about those issues and we get his perspective on where things stand. Post this. Okay. Post this, the AI actually gives feedback in terms of how responses come out. Where the first response that we've kind of had in this conversation is actually a very Indian dialect. I believe the persona is from Hyderabad. So you have a very Hyderabadi accent of how the conversation plays out. And the second response that I give out can be very different. So even the learner can talk in a language like English, where he can use a combination of English and Hindi the way he might in a real conversation. In a review, it might not be as formal as we want it to be. So he can use English dialect, and you can have the persona responding accordingly. So we can at our end define all of these things and have these conversations playing out. That's an example that I wanted to show you on the screen. Unfortunately, the audio is not working, but would be happy to show you on our booth outside. So what happens after this conversation? So post this conversation, one is the learner gets feedback. The learner gets to know that based on the conversation I just had, what's my score like on a scale of 5? Out of the points that I was supposed to cover, what did I cover, not cover? What does my, and what should I do better? So where did I struggle? What should I do better? So the feedback that you see as a paragraph can be defined the way we want it to be defined. So the framework that we want to put for feedback, maybe we want to give a few examples and so on, all of that can be baked into this context. The second part of the feedback is much more on the skills and the confidence levels, the empathy, the energy. So all of these things can be assessed by the AI and given feedback. And the best part is, there are organizations which might rate, let's say, energy as very high for a particular role play, whereas, the other organizations may not, because their expectation of what energy is very different. So we can actually calibrate there that, what we have seen in these 5 role plays, what would a manual reviewer give them? We can take it from a small panel of, let's say, 10 people, and based on that calibrate what the AI should give as feedback to these and actually calibrate it to your organization. Now, just wanted to show you the magic behind the screen, that some role play like this, how is it really created, So creating something like this actually takes us less than 5 minutes. So we are, we are only limited by our own ideas of what kind of role plays, what categories and what situations of role plays do we want to create. It's not something where, we have to, we can try out a lot of scenarios, and we can iterate much faster. So this is the first part where you set up the role play. The brain of the role play really comes in here, where, you tell the AI that, by the way, you are a manager, and this is the discussion that you're having. And, you tell Vikram that, by the way, Vikram, these are the issues that you've actually gone through. You're facing some issues at home at the same time when, some of these projects came in, and you're expecting a performance appraisal which actually didn't happen. So you're giving a lot of context to Vikram, who's playing the AI, and that context can come out in the conversation if the manager, who's the learner, probes him well. So, all of this has been given. You have the user language, which is conversational English, and you have the difficulty level set as aggressive. So, it's not going to be very easy to, really break into and have that conversation. There's going to be a lot of defensiveness the moment you say that, some deadline has been missed. There's going to be a lot of excuses that someone like Vikram could come in when the persona is set to aggressive. And the voice can be set up and so on. What skills are mapped, what points are to be covered and so on. You can set up the skills. And finally, we can also give inputs that at each step of the conversation, what should you do? So these are additional prompts that can be given to have a specific type of conversation. So this is just the brain behind the role play, that all of this can be done in 5 minutes, and at a very granular level, we can configure how the role play plays out. I wanted to just spend 2 minutes on, talking about what kind of scenarios, what kind of use cases we typically deal with. So to talk about role plays, so we are not, what we are saying is, we will not take care of all of your learning needs. We'll focus purely on the conversational aspects of things. And this can come in at different stages of the process, right? So pre-training, so we usually have our workshops, we have a learning agenda. Pre-training, before people go through, these can be used to calibrate what skill level people are starting with. During training as well, normally in role plays, you have like one person going at a time, whereas within 5 minutes, all your participants could finish the role play and get feedback at one go with a few examples and so on. Post-training, after 1 week of the training, 1 month of the training, 3 months of the training, at different times, we can simulate and again assign these role plays so that we don't have to call people back into a classroom. All of this can be done automated, and the feedback can then be discussed. Good examples can be shared with the cohort as as use cases and so on. And finally, even from a hiring perspective, while we have a lot of our personality tests, we have some MCQ aptitude tests and so on as very basic. Before someone actually comes into the role play, especially if conversational skills are important to the role, this can be used as a good assessment center to kind of qualify and filter out people. And also on the point of assessment center, it can also be used for some initial assessments regarding our promotions and so on, for certain skills that are very critical for the next level of promotion. So these are a few use cases that we have seen. And in the modern workplace, where we are not just looking at covering the hygiene, but are looking to retain and attract the best talent out there. How can we kind of show them that when they want some kind of scenario, some learning, we can actually create it for them. So this is an example that we have done for a lot of IT firms. We have done for BFSI companies. We have done for auto CD companies. So please come to our booth. We'll be happy to actually build a few use cases, scenarios which are very specific to your situations, and deploy it to a few people to show you how it really plays. Thank you for your time, and hope I was able to add some value. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rohan. I would like to invite Ms. Tanaya Chowdhury on the dais for doing the felicitation.